Hey, it's Sid. I go by the Blind Artisan and I've been using Procreate for about 6 years now, which is insane. I love Procreate. It's literally my holy grail to creating my whimsical fantasy illustrations, and whether you love Procreate too or you're still trying to find that application that feels right to you, I'm super excited and honored to be part of your creative journey. So thank you for being here. This is actually going to be a series where we go through my entire workflow, from the way that I plan, the way that I sketch, picking the right colors, rendering, and bringing those images to life through hoodies, prints, skateboard decks, and beyond. So I'm super excited to have you here, and thank you. So without further ado, let's start video 1. In this video, we are going to be talking about planning and sketching. When it comes to a piece, I think that planning is really important. And sometimes I think as artists, we're so ready to get into the sketching phase and then be like, forget the plan, let's just go with intuition. And sometimes it actually works really well that way. But in other times, it's really nice to have some sort of structure just in case it doesn't work out that way. So for me, I always like to start off every piece with a plan. And I do that by creating a mood board and by mind mapping. So let's start off with mood boarding. I love to use Pinterest. Pinterest is an amazing search engine where you can basically create your own little boards that are custom to you and whatever project that you're working on. In this series, I'm going to be working on my Gemini piece, which is going to be super fun. And so I'm just picking a whole bunch of pieces that I feel like represent Gemini, or I want my piece to sort of like represent, whether it's just the colors that I really like, the concept, the posing of the figures, just certain elements that I want to be able to refer to, all those things I'm doing with this mood board. And so whether you're using Pinterest or you're creating your own personal collage, I think that mood boarding is a really great idea when it comes to starting off your brainstorming. I also feel like it helps get those visions that you have in your head out broadly on paper so that you can visualize it, and so you can be like, do I really want these colors? Do I really like the vibe of this, you know? And yeah, I just really love mood boarding. After you create a mood board, or simultaneously, you can do this in whatever order you want, I also like to mind map here and there. I don't do this in every single piece, but I feel like it's something that is cool to fall back on because mind mapping is breaking up your ideas into words. So my word is Gemini. The first thing that comes up to me when I think of Gemini are the twins. And so that leads me into a rabbit hole of, do I want them to be showing different sides? Because Gemini, a common thing is that they have different sides to them, which is really fascinating. I'm brainstorming all these things and putting them on paper to see, what do I really like? This also gives me a chance to research. So something that I like to incorporate in my paintings are flowers and stones, and I like to do them specifically to their zodiacs. So for Libra, I'm a Libra, our stone is the opal and our flower is the marigold. And for Gemini, their stone is the pearl and their flower is lavender. When you're mind mapping, really allow yourself to do some research, to put it all in one place, and to pinpoint those things that really stick to you, because those things will make your pieces unique. Those things will help you think outside the box, and those things will also help you get really inspired to draw. During this process of planning, I also think it's very important to ask yourself why you're creating this piece and what you want people to feel when the piece is completed. This kind of gives you some sort of goal and some sort of mission to sort of have. And sometimes you might not need a reason to create a piece, but for me, I know that asking these questions helps direct me in a certain direction, because certain colors have certain moods, right? Certain figures, certain poses have certain connotations, and keeping those in mind in the planning phase can be really helpful to determining how you want to approach your own piece. With that being said, now that you have your planning done, now that you're all inspired, your creative juices are flowing, and you are just ready to start drawing, it's time to get out your iPad. And before we actually open up Procreate and get started, something that you need to know is that not all iPads are made equally. Depending on the iPad that you pick, there's going to be some size and layer limitations that you may have. And so I found this really cool site called brookglazier.com, and they kind of go over the different sizes and layer limitations that each iPad has, and I think it's super helpful. So I'll leave the article down below, and I'll also put a little graphic on the screen so you can sort of see what their limitations are. For me, I did notice a difference because I had the 12.9-inch iPad Pro at one point, and then I broke it, unfortunately. And so now I have the iPad Air 5th Gen, which I really love, actually. But I did notice some limitations when it came to using bigger canvases and the amount of layers that I would have. So if you are shopping for an iPad, definitely keep that in mind. But just know that if you have an iPad mini, a regular iPad, an iPad Air, or an iPad Pro, you are set to use Procreate regardless. So create some art no matter what, okay? Like, let's get it. Enjoy it. Get creative, okay? Future Sid here. I realized that I completely forgot to share what I am drawing with in this video, and that is the Apple Pencil 2nd generation. And Apple actually has several Apple Pencil options that you can choose from based on your iPad model and your personal preference. So definitely do your research to see which Apple Pencil is compatible for you and your workflow. I personally like the 2nd generation one because it magnetically connects to my iPad, and it also charges that way too. So it's just really convenient because when I'm done working, it's charging back up. So definitely do your own research, see what works best for you. And yeah, back to the video. I guess it's time to open up the Procreate app. So I have a little tour for you that I sort of created. It's a little bit brief, so let me know if you want a more detailed tour, but let's get into that tour, okay? And I'll see you after. If you haven't already, you're going to want to go ahead and download Procreate. You can find it in the App Store, and then you'll see this as your first option. Oops. You're going to go ahead and click this. I believe it costs a little bit of money, but it's a one-time payment, and I think it's a good deal. So we'll go ahead and click this. And when you land here, you're going to be greeted with a little library. Yours might be empty or might have a few examples in there, but don't worry, it'll get filled up eventually. But this is all of your previous artwork, so you can always access what you've been working on. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and press this plus sign in the upper right hand corner, and this is where you can also see all the previous sizes that you used in the past. I actually never really paid attention to this, but this would be really great if you use a lot of the sizes often. Like if you use 18x24 more than one time, this might be a great quick menu for you to go to. We're gonna go ahead and click on this folder. You have a few options of how you can measure this out, but I like to go with inches because that's just easier for me to understand. And some things that you should note when you are creating a piece, I like to make sure that my DPI, which is dots per inch, is 300 in general. This makes sure that it's good for print. It makes sure that it's good for web. You can always size it down or compress it if it's too big for web. And yeah, I just really like it. I also would like to note that you want to paint in RGB and convert to CMYK later, because RGB allows you to access a more vibrant, saturated range of color than CMYK, which will be more desaturated because that's just going off of what your printer uses, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and K being black. With that being said, another pro tip, I like to paint things at a much larger size than I actually am planning to print things, because you never know what you want to use a piece for. Using a larger canvas size just allows you to have more flexibility with your art when you're using like Clip Studio Paint, Photoshop, and Procreate. So with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and make this an 18x24 with the DPI being 300. And here you can also see the maximum layers that I'll be able to use, which is 22. We're gonna go ahead and create. Woohoo! And here is our canvas. So now that we are in Procreate, let's go ahead and do a little tour of some things that you might want to know, starting from right to left. Here is your color wheel, which is like my favorite part. I love colors. This is where you can see your range of colors. You can also see it this way. You have your palettes and recently used colors at the bottom here. And then we also have another color wheel, which is really cool. And you can increase and decrease saturation. Of course, I'm a color girly, so the saturation is on 10. And then we have these little swipers, which is really cool. And you can enter a hex code here if you're looking for a specific color. So there's a lot of options for how you can mess with your colors, depending on how you work. For me, I generally just like to use a color wheel. It's easy for me to tell because I'm always, again, my saturation is on 10. I'm always on this side when it comes to color, but that's for another video. Anyway, so you can also access your palettes here. And also you can bring in a new palette with using a photo or different options here, which is really nice. Another cool shortcut is, let's say I use this color and I decide, okay, I want to click on this color. I can press this button, which will take me back to the previous color I was using. So, little quick pro tip. Here is where you can access your layers. You can double tap your layers to access more options. Clicking this plus button, you can add layers. Swiping it to the left, you can delete it, you can duplicate it, or you can lock it. If you click on the end sign, you have a bunch of different options for color modes, which we'll also talk about later. You can also adjust your opacity, which will be really helpful when it comes to sketching. Now, the eraser tool. When you click on the eraser tool, you'll be able to see a wide variety of brushes in all kinds of different sections, okay? And it's really cool. I advise that you just like play around and see what works for you. Here is the smudge tool. Same thing, you get a whole variety of brushes that you can use to smudge around and play around with. Here is the paintbrush tool. This is when all of these different brushes really do come in handy. I would say definitely look into finding one brush that you really, really like. Mine is, I believe, is in the inking section here. And my favorite brush is this one because I really love a good taper. Play around with your brushes and pick a select view. I like to switch between this one. I also love the ones in the drawing section. Oh no, sketching. It's in the sketching section. So 6B. I really like this because as you can see, it has a little bit of texture here, which is really fun to play with, especially with the contrast of this very smooth texture. It's really nice. So definitely play around with your brushes. Keep it as simple as possible when you're just starting out. For reference, the same brush that I use for drawing, which is usually syrup, I use for my eraser. So keep it really simple. For blending, I have a custom brush set that I got from school, but play around with all different kinds of brushes. You'd be surprised at which one works for you when it comes to blending. And we'll talk more about that when we get into our rendering phase. Now, making our way here, this is a selection tool. As you can see, you can move your stuff around. You can also resize it. So right now I'm in uniform here, but you can also go into freeform and kind of stretch things out. And then you can also go into distort, which is really cool if you're trying to do things in perspective. Like lettering and stuff is really fun to do with this distort one, and even warp because you can kind of mold things around. The ones that I use the most, especially in general, but especially during the sketching phase, is uniform and sometimes freeform if something's looking a little wonky to me. You can also flip horizontal, you can flip vertical, you can do a little rotation, you can fit the canvas, and then these are some options of how things will look when you size them down. So for me, I keep it on bilinear, but everybody else has their own preference. My preference is bilinear, I believe, but what you will notice is when you size things down, it might get a little bit pixelated. Although it's not that bad. See, yeah, you see it here? You see the little dots. So it's usually not too bad with the setting that I have it on, but that's just something to keep in mind. Here, this is the selection tool. I love this for like freehand and moving things around. This is really crucial during the drawing phase for me, just to move things around and see what I actually like. You can also, so you can do it by freehanding. You can do it with automatic, which is good for maybe like photos or taking out the background of something. You can do rectangle, which is nice, just to grab something. And then you can press this to move it around. And you can do an ellipse shape. And same thing, if you want to move it around, you can do that. Or if you want to, let's say, fill something in, you can fill it in by dragging, let me show you how to do that, by dragging this into this. You have your copy paste options and a few other options that you won't really need during the drawing process. Here these are all adjustment stuff. So you have the hue and saturation where you can change the colors of things by sliding this. You can also change the saturation of things and the value of something, the brightness. And then there's also a whole bunch of other color modes, but I feel like this is the most helpful during the sketching phase. And I also know that there's some people who like to use liquify, but I personally don't really use it that much, so I can't really speak on that. Here are a few other tools. So you can obviously insert a file, insert a photo, yada, yada, yada. You can also do animation assist, page assist, drawing guides. I like the drawing guide because here you can also do like play with around with symmetry. There's a whole bunch of different options here. Horizontal, vertical, quadrant, and you can see here in the middle, these different areas are switching. So if we did this, it creates some really cool effects here. So that's really fun too. Something else that's really cool is that you get a time-lapse replay of what you're working on, which is really nice for like social media, posting on YouTube, things like that. And then your exporting options, which is nice too. You can do it as a Photoshop file, which I like to do if there's like some adjustments I want to make when I'm like maybe converting it to CMYK for print or like other things like that too. And yeah, I feel like this is all you really need for drawing as far as this top bar here. Moving down to here, these all have to do with your brush specs. With this slider, you can always increase the size of your brush here, and you can mess around with the opacity. Yeah. So with opacity, this could be really fun because you can layer on top of things by messing around with the opacity. And as you can see, there's a big difference between this and this by me just playing around with the slider. I wanted to go back to this tool really quick to let you know that if you have any brushes you want to add, or if you want to add a new folder, you can always drop this down, add a new folder, name it, and then you could always drag your brushes into that folder, which is really cool. You can also play around with your brushes shape and stuff like that. I don't do this too much, but you can if you want to by customizing your own brushes, which is really nice that they have these options. Starting out, I would advise that you just find a brush in here that you like, that you're willing to play around with, and just go ham. Just like play and see what feels right to your hand, because we all have different pressures that we use. We all work differently. But yeah, I hope this was a easy to understand quick Procreate tour. If you want something more in depth, let me know, but I feel like this is what you need for drawing. So your essentials for drawing and sketching, I would say the brush tool and finding a brush that you like, smudge tool, and you need your eraser tool and your layers, obviously. One more thing before we actually get into sketching, I wanted to show you that there are actually some gesture controls that can make your life easier. So here are some of the controls that you can play around with and just look into them at your own discretion. But in general, what are some useful ones for me are the double tapping, which erases something, and triple tapping, which redoes something. Another helpful shortcut is if you want to create a perfect circle, you can make a circle shape, hold it, and then press your finger down on the side here, and boom, you have a circle. And if you want to create a straight line, all you have to do is hold it at the end here, and your line is straight. And it's really, really, really convenient to do. Let's get into drawing. I hope this was super easy to understand. Yay! So we are at the fun part of the video, which is where we start sketching, and it will be really cool if you guys also sketch along with me, and we can treat this like a little art talk where I'll just share my process, the things I'm thinking, the things I'm feeling, and we can, I guess, learn from each other with whatever you think and feel in the comments. But right here, I'm just breaking down my sketch into basic shapes. I brought the first layer to a lower opacity. I normally bring it to maybe like 80% or 70%, so not too light, but light enough where it doesn't feel so set in stones. And I'm really just breaking down the basic shapes from my reference photo, which I'll put up here so that you can see what I'm referring to. I really love this reference photo because I felt like, you know, it portrayed two people, but in a really dynamic way that gave it flow. And during this whole sketching process, I kind of just allowed myself to change my mind. I feel like sketching should feel very free. It should feel like you are throwing up whatever's in your brain and you're just processing whatever's going on and making your own decisions. Sketching is all about making mistakes, correcting those mistakes, and evaluating your composition and seeing how that's going for you. So that's what I'm doing here. Is like a lot of shape building, a lot of correcting. Oh my gosh, I struggle with those feet the entire way through. Like, I don't even think I got it at the end, but it was enough, you know. But yeah, I really enjoy sketching for this reason, for the reason that there's like a lot less pressure, I guess. I feel like I'm able to really just make mistakes without feeling too much pressure to get things perfectly. And the way that I normally sketch is I sketch with a really, really light layer, and then I use other layers on top of it to sort of refine, because unless you're super duper skilled, and there are people who are super duper skilled, maybe I'm not that in this area, but unless you're super duper skilled, I think it's perfectly fine. Even if you are super duper skilled, it's perfectly fine to have a series of under sketches before you get to the more refined, clean looking one. I think it honestly makes sense. And personally, again, it's nice not having pressure to get things perfect on the first try. You'll also notice that during this process, I am using that selection tool, the one that looks like the pointer finger right here, to just like size things down and move things around and adjust things in a way. And the way that I love to draw, because I think drawing digitally is similar but different than drawing traditionally. I think that, you know, digital art has a lot of tools that are convenient, and I don't see why not use them, right? So using that selection tool to move things around, to place things where they're supposed to go, to size things down, it's really nice. I think because I am able to do this with digital art, it makes it really easy for me to not have to do thumbnails, because I almost treat this as my thumbnailing process, and some people might not like that, but hey, your artistic process is your artistic process no matter what anyone says. So who cares if anybody judges, because it doesn't matter. As long as the art at the end comes out unique and true to you, then I think that's all that matters in the end. If you're new to drawing in Procreate, some advice I would give to you is to not be afraid to work big and get smaller as you go. Because sometimes working into those details can be super overwhelming. Another thing too is don't be afraid to zoom in and out of your canvas. I do this quite a bit when I'm working, because I have definitely been a victim to staying zoomed in for too long and then something looking absolutely wonky, like these feet right here. Oh my god. Like, it gets better. It just doesn't get perfect. Anyway, but yeah, zooming out, like, just really helps you know what's going on and helps you put things into perspective. Also, flipping your canvas is really convenient too. I did that more at the beginning, but I could also work on doing that more throughout my pieces. But flipping a canvas gives you a new perspective to your own piece without you having to step away. But I also suggest not drawing for over an hour. I would say, like, draw for 50 minutes, take a break, walk around a bit, and then come back, and you'll be surprised of how fresh your eyes take the piece, like, and how fresh your eyes are, and how you can point out new mistakes or things that you want to change, or even how you've just came up with some new ideas and inspiration just because you took a break. I don't think it's healthy for us to be sitting at our tablets or at our canvases for hours on end if we don't have to, because, you know, our bodies are sacred, and art takes a toll on our bodies. Like, I don't think we put enough emphasis on the fact that it does that. Like, our shoulders get hunched, our backs get hunched. Like, it is a strenuous activity. Our eyes are straining, especially if you're visually impaired like me. Like, my eyes get tired from especially looking at the screen all day, but even if I'm drawing in my sketchbook, just from just focusing for a long period of time, like, be sure to take a break and go on a walk and come back with fresh eyes, and you'll be surprised of how you're able to solve more problems. Okay, so here I am just starting to work in more details. As you can see, I've started to add garments onto the figures, and I'm really excited because, like I mentioned several times, I'm doing a piece based on the Gemini zodiac sign. So I wanted the twins to look like twins, but to also look like separate individuals, because twins are separate individuals. So I gave one more like baggy pants, like those pants, I would totally wear those on the daily. And I gave the other one like this flowy skirt, and I just want her to look like she's just like levitating, like both of them. They're just levitating in air, but they're connected by their hair, to show the connection between the two personalities. And I really like the concept of it, and I feel like I fall in love with it more and more as I keep going. And then what I started to do was I added these pearls into the actual garment, so it would actually like accent it. And that's just something I came up with on the whim, but I really liked that decision. I thought it was really, really, really nice because, I think they'll look really good. Honestly. So yeah, like I mentioned before, I'm just slowly adding in detail, and I haven't even gone into another layer yet. This is all on one layer of me just like slowly building it up. And it feels really good because, again, it's on a low opacity. I feel like I'm still just really roughly sketching. I'm not worried about it being perfect, and I'm just really enjoying the process. I hope that when you're sketching, you are just enjoying what you're doing, because that passion is what's going to show through any sketch. At this point, I ended up losing some footage, so I actually did go over in another layer with red. And okay, so what I was trying to do was I wanted to do like a time lapse just on my phone to save some storage instead of just like filming regularly on my phone. Um, and it just didn't work out okay. Like, the exposure and everything wasn't right, so I had to go back into just filming regularly. But here I go again, refining, and as you can see, it's already so much cleaner. Look at her go! I love her outfit. Like, her outfit was just coming out really, really nice. And again, I'm just adding more detail as I go, and the feet are looking a little bit better than they were in the beginning. Before, they were looking like little sad socks. So, like, just remember to trust the process when you're drawing. Remember that, like, if you don't like something, the sketch is the time to go ahead and correct it, because the worst thing that you can do is not have a solid sketch and then be getting into color and you don't like something and it's so much more work to fix it. So work on the sketch as long as you feel comfortable and until you feel happy with what you're coming out with. But as you can see, I'm adding detailing into the hair. I love it so much. It looks so fluffy. Can you believe that I haven't drawn type 4 hair on my people in a while? I usually do like locks because I have locks, and so I'm like, oh, we need a representation, especially in fantasy art. Are you kidding me? But this style was really, 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 really fun to draw. If I were to ever have my hair out of locks again, I would totally have to figure out how I can make this style happen. I still, like, when my locks get really long, I still might figure out how I can do it. Like, not with all the, it might not be as floofy, but maybe it could still have, like, the little bubble situation going on. But anyway, yeah, this is what I'm doing. This is the probably the most satisfying part because I start to see everything coming together and I start to feel really fulfilled because before it's like I don't know. I don't know if it's working. I don't know how this process is going. And then just seeing everything slowly come together, I get really, really, really excited. Um, but yeah, so that's what's happening here. I really hope that this my way of working is helpful for you guys, at least just knowing how I work. I get a little bit self-conscious because, I see everybody working differently, but I think it's just because I've always wanted to like um feel like I'm sharing proper information, right? So, but again, with something like art, we all have our own way of doing things, and I think that's a beautiful thing because then we can all learn from each other, and then adapt it to a way that we understand and do it in our own way, which is super, super cool. So I'm really excited and happy I'm sharing my process with you guys. It's really an honor. Um, yeah, so right now I'm detailing these lavender pieces. I something that I've started doing and something that you should consider is like I said, I want you to be happy with your sketch before you go into color. But something that I started doing because I notice I always go over my line work after I add in my flat color and detailing anyway, is I do my sketch in a way that I like it compositionally, but my line work and everything might not be perfect because I'm gonna be painting over it anyway. So um, as you start painting and finding your rhythm in Procreate, just remember that you're going to be learning more and more about your workflow and you can adapt what you do to that because that's kind of what I'm doing with these lavender pieces. Like I would originally, like a year ago, I would make them all super detailed and spend like forever on my line work, line art here. Um, then I would just go over it and it would have been just like a waste of time. So that's just something that I stopped doing. Also, something that you should know is, and I don't know if I mentioned this earlier on, but when you're sketching, and I said start simple and build on that, I also mean like don't be afraid to size down your subject matter and expand. That's how I'm able to get such detailed compositions. It's me starting off with one subject matter and slowly, or subject matter, and slowly adding on to it. And that's just really easy for me to do, and I feel like I'm adding things in with bite-sized pieces. Like first it was the figures, then it was the hair, then it was the faces. Then I was like, let me add some lavender and some arches around them. And what if I want to make it even more detailed? I could shrink it down and expand even more, you know? So really your options in Procreate are so limitless. And you can really create some beautiful illustrations in here by just experimenting and pushing yourself past your limits. So, yeah.
Oh goddamn, you made me feel sweet. And if I'm losing my mind, would you lose yours with me? You made me wanna melt like water in the pan. It's hard to keep my cool, knowing I'm your man. So let's spend some time wasting it away. Your love is like.
And that's a wrap for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you learned something new, leave in the comments, or also leave in the comments some extra Procreate tips that you think people should know. And I will see you in the next video where we go over finding the perfect color and flat coloring. So I hope to see you there, and until next time, bye!